China has condemned the Japanese defense white paper issued on Friday. The annual report names Russia, China and DPRK as Japan's main security concerns. A spokesperson for the Chinese embassy in Tokyo says the white paper interferes with China's internal affairs, with comment on Taiwan, Hong Kong and Xinjiang. The document comes as the Japanese government prepares to review its national security strategy. It's considering doubling the country's military spending as 2% of GDP and developing first strike capabilities against, quote, enemy bases.
Japan's new version of the defense white paper accuses and smears China's defense policy, normal military development and legitimate maritime activities, exaggerates the so-called China threat, and interferes in China's internal affairs on the Taiwan issue, to which China expresses its strong dissatisfaction and resolute opposition and has sent stern representations to the Japanese side.
I think the Japanese white paper on defense repeatedly play up the question of Taiwan or the Taiwan card. I think primarily it's because Japan wanted to make the question of Taiwan to justify its change, its revise of defense and security strategy. As we have known that Japan has announced publicly that by the end of the year, they were going to revise defense documents, raise defense budget, and also they are going to debate the proposed constitutional reform that would, I think, may change the pacifist constitution of Japan that has been that has been there for almost more than 70 years. And secondly, I think Japan is also, I think, meant to sort of coordinate the recent moves and steps by United States, which has repeatedly provoked China, undermine goes against its commitment on the question of Taiwan for the purpose of contain and suppress China.
So, Professor, since you mentioned the U.S. element, let's go deeper into the some moves you just mentioned. For example, Japan's ruling party looks to double its defense spending over the next 5 years to 2% of its GDP. Could you make sense of this figure for us? Because earlier we usually encountered this number in NATO, because that's the threshold for NATO countries, isn't it?
Indeed, I think Japan, as a country, certainly it is the third largest economy, but it also has, I think, huge economic difficulties, inflations and others. It now becomes a headache, big problem for the Kishida administration. And despite the difficulty, and despite, I think, the demand and aspiration of Japanese public that they should do more on this round, some elements, particularly these conservative forces, are pushing very hard to raise its defense budget, and for the purpose, on the basis of the so-called threat from China. This is very dangerous. This is very much, I think, goes against the trend. And this is also very much, I think, will raise the concern of its Asian neighbors